This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And this is Creep Street Podcast. Of course, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod. We also have a TikTok. On Facebook, we have a forum where daily we like to interact with our listeners. It's called Citizens of the Milky Way, a Creep Street fan page. Everyone is welcome to join that. Just click the Let Me In button, and one of us will let you in. And, of course, if once a week is not enough, and let's face it, you wackos, it is not.
It's not enough for you little freaks.
And quit lying to yourself. If you think it is, just head on over to patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast where you can get all sorts of goodies. Now, Maureen, I kind of want to jump right into this because...
Right.
Now, this is not subject matter we haven't dealt with. We're talking about a cult today. But unlike the other ones we've done, this one is still very much going.
Yes.
Not that, like, Buddha Field and stuff was still technically going, but, like, this one is still probably as big as it's ever been.
Right. There has been a lot of scandal kind of going around this cult, so they do have the reputation of a cult rather than just a group. So it clearly, someone spilled the beans a little bit here already,
yes.
But it's still ongoing, it's still strong, and this man still has one hell of a following.
That's right, still at large. Oh, and just so our listeners know, this one may or may not, we don't know, but it may or may not be a little on the shorter side this week.
That's right.
Just because, like we said, this is still ongoing, and we really wanted to dive into it because it's very fascinating. But Maureen, I think we've tickled their taints long enough.
Sure.
What are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about the Cult of Bentinho Massaro.
Ooh, hot diggity damn.
Yes, that's right. We're talking about the man, the myth, the legend himself, the Dutch motherfucker.
The Dutch bastard, Massaro. Oh, man. Spank us with those sources, Maureen.
Absolutely. I would love to spank you all with my sources. First of all, we gotta just use his own website at bentinomassaro.com. Also, a great article at Guardian called My Journey into the Dark Hypnotic World of a Millennial Guru by Oscar Schwartz. Another article from Rolling Stone called The Instagram Guru Fucking His Female Followers to Freedom by E.J. Dixon. And a fantastic YouTube page called Dine in Psychology, and this video was called Bentino Massaro, the New Wave of Cult Leader. Very great account there. Highly recommend you go and check that out.
Absolutely. I'm excited about this, Maureen, because this guy claims to be a lot of things.
Yes, he does. He claims to be able to bilocate, to levitate, to teleport, to have telekinesis. I mean, this man claims to have a bunch of different powers, not just his ability to speak to a large group of people, but actually that he himself has these powers.
And I believe claims that he is, or at least part, extraterrestrial, right?
Yes, he kind of says that, like, his being is organically human, his physical being, but his energy and his vibrations are extraterrestrial.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about this douchebag.
So I think before we dive into some of our other sources here about who they say he is, I think it might be helpful to just read directly from his bio on his website to see a little bit about what they're kind of pushing out.
The horse's mouth. Let's hear it.
Exactly. Here we go. Bentinho Massaro is a different kind of being. You could say he is extraordinary, having integrated the extra or non-physical levels of his being into his human experience. He calls this true simultaneity. I have trouble saying that word because it's not a real word. It's simultaneous and spontaneity mixed together.
Already we're noticing that cult gobbledygook speech.
Yes, this is peak cult behavior.
Yeah, like where they'll just fucking make up stupid, or they'll say things that sound like Keith Raniere would say things that sound very profound and flowery, but when you actually break it down, the guy's not fucking saying anything.
Exactly. Or they're using some words that you do already know, that you hear in your everyday life.
Word salad, that's the phrase.
Word salad,
Word
yes.
salad.
And then they kind of put on these new definitions onto the words.
Right.
So that you don't really, it kind of lulls you into thinking you know what's going on.
Right.
But I digress. He calls this true simultaneity, and he claims we can all learn to expand and live in this way. Although already fairly awake, aware of spirituality in general, and generally bright in spirit since he was born, it wasn't until the age of around 16 that Bentino's search for enlightenment really started to pick up in both speed and intensity of the desire to seek and find the source of all existence, as he put it to himself at that time. At the age of 18, he had his first memorable shift in consciousness. He experientially saw that this presence he had been looking for was already here. Ever since this first and introductory shift into enlightenment, he has been riding the waves of an intensely awakened life. For as long as he can remember, he has always had a knack for teaching whatever he was fascinated by at that time. He had a good ability to guide, lead, and instruct. After his initial awakening at 18, his sharings online started to shift from a more traditional yogic point of view into a view more comparable to the teachings found in Dzogchen, which is based in the understanding that the natural state of emptiness, awareness, bliss is already at the root of each experience. Bentino's slogan at that time became always, already, present.
I love that.
We love this. This is just peak cult bullshit.
Absolutely.
Right from the top.
Let's just give them a random taste of it. Here's just a random taste of some of that bullshit.
What's your calling? What's your calling? F you. F you. F you. What's your calling? F you. What's your calling? If you weren't so high up in your own ass about this fucking concept of respect, you would actually see how much love there is behind me saying what I say.
Oh, yeah.
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 So it's hard because saying that you have been awakened from a very young age is something that really anyone can just say. It's not like he's done anything to prove that he has been able to access this higher level of vibration already. It's just he says that he has, and he says it with such authority that people just believe it right off the bat.
Well, can I go ahead? I want to make an observation right off the front.
Please, please.
I will say this. Unlike the Keith Ranieres, many of the folks we've covered, the Buddhafield, can't even remember his name. I will say Bentino is actually a really good-looking guy.
Yes, he is.
Unlike other cult leaders where it's like, what the fuck? He's actually a pretty damn good-looking guy.
Yeah.
He's not that tall, but he's in great shape.
He's like 33. He's got blonde hair, very Dutch-looking.
Very good-looking guy. I will say, granted, I've only seen clips of him talking. I don't see the charisma.
I know. I don't really see it either.
He seems kind of dull. He seems kind of dead behind the eyes and kind of boring. But I will say, compared to other cult leaders, he's actually a pretty good-looking son of a bitch.
Yes. We'll give him that. You got some hot points.
Like
Bentino.
Keith Raniere, he looked like a turtle who lost his shell.
Yes.
He looked like when Mario jumps on one of the Koopas and they fly out of their shell. He looks like that.
Right.
Massaro is actually a pretty damn good-looking guy.
So props to you, Bentino.
Yeah.
When all else fails, you got that.
Yeah.
Now, also going back to what he said here, that his slogan at the time when he was younger, that I'm sure it's still somewhat present in his teachings today. Maybe it's not at the forefront as it used to be, but always already present. Now, this is a really attractive thing to hear. Like, oh, I can always already be present. It's already within me that I have the ability to do that, to just be present 100% of the time. However, it's impossible to be present 100% of the time. So you're really setting yourself up for failure right off the bat.
Also, you don't want to be present 100%
No.
of the time. I know that sounds nice, but believe me, sometimes you want to be able to retreat into your own subconscious.
Yes. You know, at the end of a long day, sometimes you want to kind of check out and not
Yeah.
really be present.
You probably don't. It's probably worse for your mental health to be constantly present. Now, we could all probably afford to be a little more present than we are maybe on average, but
Right.
you probably don't want to go 100% present all the fucking time.
Right. And you're setting yourself up to be disappointed in yourself and to think that there's something wrong with you because you can't do this thing that Bentino is saying is so important and vital
Right.
to being happy and to being enlightened and to vibrating on a higher plane.
Right, exactly.
Now, I'm going to jump ahead here to just tell you a little bit about Bentino in his own words here from his website. So this section right here that I'm going to read is from the mouths of babes, from his own lil Dutch mouth.
Oh, yes.
When it comes to truly emptying oneself of ego and consequently quantum leap one's ability to be of service to others, perceived sacrifice of one's self-image and one's loved ones is often part of the great catalyst. Red flags are going off.
Okay.
The initiation of those sincere about service to others will invite into their lives at one point or another. Those who stay true, even when the entire world misunderstands and does not see, those who do not get swayed by the fleeting promise of validation or understanding from others, and is willing to face any such surface consequence of their personal self, will make it through this powerful initiatory offering and be that much more purified, able to now see and feel God directly within their own heart to a much higher degree than before, when the personal self was veiling the real self. The level of personal sacrifice in order to stay true to service to others requires a level of ego death that most shy away from and thus never go beyond. But what is revived at the moment of death is the most beautiful experience known to man and worth considering.
Okay.
So there you go. This is hard for me to hear on a few different levels. One is that he's saying that you need to stay the course throughout all of these teachings, no matter what anyone else says about him, no matter what you may hear, no matter what your family may say, no matter what your friends may say.
Right.
That you need to stay true, and if you do, there will be a great reward at the end.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case, and I'm sure that's what everyone feels with this man. But no, unfortunately, that is not how everyone feels. So right away, that concerns me because that's something that cult leaders like to do. They like to separate you from your friends, from your family, to say that they don't really understand you. I understand you, and I'm the only one that really understands you and that can get you to where you want to go. But Bentino's ascent to his online kingdom really began in 2010. At the time, he was 21 years old, and he had just returned to Holland after a 6-month-long spiritual voyage in India. There he said that he referred to this time as an awakening, and it was a spiritual experience where the duality between the self and the universe dissolves into cosmic oneness. And so it was really in 2010 that he really started posting more online,
Right.
getting more of a following. But then in 2012, his teachings really came to focus on two ideas. The first was that a state of enlightenment was possible without meditation, and that all you had to do was become aware of your awareness in order to achieve enlightenment.
Oh, okay. So
That's it. That's all.
So you don't have to. So meditation is not as big of a deal for him.
Well, it's kind of weird. He says that, but then on all of his retreats, it's like full of meditation.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't really understand, to be completely
Right.
honest with you guys here. With Creep Street, I'm gonna be honest, some of the stuff that this man talks about, I don't get. A lot of what he talks about in his speeches truly does go over my head because I have no idea what this man is talking about
Right.
most of the time. It's really hard to grasp.
That's when you have to ask, is he actually saying something that's
Right.
complex and profound, or is it just fucking word salad?
Right, exactly.
And also, so people know, that's in itself is fine. There's nothing illegal about just saying fancy words that don't mean anything.
Right.
It's, as we'll see as we get into, it's when you start abusing your followers. People should be allowed to follow whatever stupid shit they want, whether it's stupid or not. It's
Right.
when, obviously, that's not what the bad shit is.
Right, exactly.
It's just when you know all this bad shit, suddenly all that stuff just becomes so fucking obnoxious.
Right. And also it's because, in my opinion, there is no safe cult out there.
You're right.
There is no cult that behaves like a cult that is actually benevolent.
You're right.
They don't exist. So when you see these hallmarks of cults coming out right from the beginning, I think it's important to call them out so that people, maybe someone that's listening to this is also in a high control group, and they don't even realize that they're in a high control group until they hear some of these situations, these similar things
Right.
that we're talking about. And it can point out to you and say, oh, if that's true for this group, then what's true for the group that I'm a part of?
Right, exactly.
So the first, and this was in 2012, his main kind of teachings was, once again, that you could achieve enlightenment by just becoming aware of your awareness. And then the second thing was basically just the law of attraction that was made famous by Rhonda Byrne in The Secret, if anyone remembers that book and that movie
Right,
that came out. That was like
And
on Oprah.
Yes.
Keith Raniere talks about it.
And the key phrase is made famous by The Secret. The whole idea of law of attraction has been around since forever, but they were the first one. The Secret was kind of the first time someone basically branded it
Right.
and tried to sell it,
Exactly.
at least on a large fucking scale.
Right. But before we go any deeper, I think it might be worthwhile to talk a little bit about his life as a boy.
I think so. I want to know, how did this guru become who he is?
Yeah. So Bentino lived, as far as I could tell, a pretty normal middle-class life in the Netherlands, in a suburb outside of Amsterdam. His mother was an elementary school teacher, and his father worked for an energy company. And from when Bentino was a young boy, they enrolled him in a self-help and meditation program called the Silva Mind Control Method, which was supposed to increase IQ and instruct in clairvoyance.
Wow. Okay, so the parents were
were
somewhat into this stuff.
Exactly. They were already kind of into this new age kind of atmosphere.
Interesting. Okay.
So he didn't
okay.
lick it off a stone. He got it from his mama and daddy.
Okay, interesting.
When he was a teenager, Bentino enrolled in a pseudoscientific human optimization course called Neuro-Linguistic Programming, also known as NLP.
I think, wasn't that what
Keith Raniere used?
who was his lady? Nancy
Nancy Salzman.
Nancy Salzman.
Yes.
Didn't she, before Nexium, didn't she say she was involved in like neuro-linguistic programming or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And neuro-linguistic programming is kind of a way to talk to people in a way that you are able to manipulate them into believing or saying what you want them to.
Right.
So it's kind of, in my opinion, a little bit fucked up, a little bit naughty.
Yeah.
And he also took up yoga, meditation, and Reiki. And apparently his interests really set him apart in school, but it set him on a, quote, desperate quest filled with effort, judgment, self-torture, and constant thriving.
F you, what's your calling? F you, what's your calling?
Constant thrive.
Constant thriving. He seems like he himself was looking for answers from a very young age and looking for the reason for existence and wanting to find a creator or something like that from a very young age. But going back to his adult life, a little after 2012, Bentino started in Boulder, Colorado, a movement called the Trinfinity Academy, whose core mission was to instigate a global spiritual revolution.
He founded this?
Yes.
Because the Massaro of today, I think I asked you this, but is there, because then it had a name. the whatever
The
academy.
Trinfinity Academy.
Does his, like, whatever he does now, is there, like, a name, or is it just him?
It's more so just him,
Okay.
as far as I am able to tell.
Okay.
Trinfinity said that the solution to life's problems were found through, one's own personal improvement and spiritual transcendence. Basically, that if you were struggling in any portion of your life, it's because that there was a deficiency or you were misaligned in your perception of reality.
There we go. Okay.
Right. This, once again, classic cult shit, that if there's anything that's going on wrong with you, that it's all completely your fault.
Right.
That everything is within your own control, which we know is not true.
Right. As we know in real life, it's a mess of all things. Yeah, you could probably take more personal responsibility, but not everything is entirely your fucking fault. Just how blaming other people for your problems is also not good.
Right.
All the time. You know what I mean? You got to take some this is like the opposite of you're taking the blame no matter what.
Exactly. So that real change really could only be achieved if you were to wake up to your truest self and look, and this is straight pat from the Guardian article right here, to look past the distortions of the material world and exist in a higher plane of consciousness.
Whew, that sounds pretty.
That sounds pretty, doesn't it? And that's what this is all about. It sounds pretty, but it doesn't really mean much at all. But Trinfinity wasn't just a group of people trying to better themselves and get closer to enlightenment. It also was a business. Trinfinity was spending up to $10,000 a month on Facebook advertising and started releasing content on hierarchical tiers, kind of like our Patreon.
Oh my goodness.
However, we're not a cult, so
Right.
it's okay.
And we also aren't spending $10,000 a month on advertising. I wish we would.
I wish we would. That would be cool, but not right now.
Yeah.
So there was like a subscription required to get a lot of these exclusive courses. A Skype chat with him cost $600 an hour.
Oh, man.
And retreats were held at these like luxury international resorts, which was just like setting back his followers thousands and thousands of dollars to go to these resorts or to go to these
we've heard
retreats.
before.
And it was during this time that Bentino's image started to change a little bit, from just this spiritual leader going forward to a tan kind of health bro, which with like living very much like an Instagram kind of life. Like
Right.
showing him rock climbing, smoking cigars, drinking whiskey, having beautiful women all around him, scuba diving, all of these different things, kind of showing how great his life was, almost as if to say, if you follow me, your life will also be as great as mine. Just kind of a funny thing here about his habit of smoking expensive cigars. He claimed, quote, "It would be beneficial if you know how to attune your consciousness to the consciousness/spirit/information of the plant." So he's able to attune to the spirit of the plant, and that's why it's okay for him to be smoking these.
He's attuned to the spirit of the tobacco.
Of the tobacco, that's right.
Okay, okay.
But it was during the end of 2016, a few team leaders got together and they held a weekend's worth of workshops to plan how they could, get Trinfinity beyond just Bentino's cult of online personality. Now, this is something that we haven't really said much of yet in explaining Bentino, but so much of what Bentino makes him such the quintessential kind of millennial, and Gen Z too, he's a millennial, but this kind of young guru is that he would use the internet as a way to really get new followers.
Right.
Through his YouTube page, through his Instagram, through his own website, through all of these different things.
Which, of course, he's not the only one. Teal Swan, there's a lot of folks that are now a lot of like online cults that since, within the last decade or so have really exploded.
So they wanted to get beyond just Bentino, and Bentino, when he found out about these team leaders holding their own workshops, he got very butthurt about it and very upset. He felt very betrayed, and so he left Boulder to do a silent meditation retreat in Thailand. And when he came back, he had a whole new plan for Trinfinity's future. He decided that he was going to relocate to Sedona, Arizona, where he would buy a plot of land and he would lead the planet towards global enlightenment by the year 2035. This is just screaming cult to me.
Absolutely.
Screaming issues.
Interesting that he didn't want other people teaching workshops.
He kind of wants it to all be him.
Yeah, very fascinating.
Now, there was a reporter named B. Schofield who kind of infiltrated her way into this group and did a little bit of an insider reporting on the group.
Right.
And in her article, which was shared hundreds of thousands of times, it was originally posted on medium.com. It has since been taken down, but you can still read it if you just type in B. Schofield, Bescofield, and then Bentinho Massaro. It'll come up and you can still read it.
Oh, okay. So she was kind of the first to really blow the lid off.
Yes, exactly. And she said that Bentino was very verbally abusive towards his students, that he pushed people away from their friends and close family, and that he was very into bizarre conspiracy theories. But what was most concerning to B. Schofield was the way that he would normalize death. Bentino says that because we all eventually die, that life is about, quote, giving up everything you have for the sake of the vision, to become the vision. And also to, quote, wake up to something important, otherwise kill yourself, end quote.
Sounds like a tattoo.
It sounds like a really fucked up, shitty, stupid-ass fucking tattoo.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there was a man named Brent Wilkins who was at one of these sessions in 2017 and actually did kill himself mid-retreat in Sedona, Arizona.
Wow.
It was never really clear if he did it because of Bentino or if it was just a coincidence, or I don't really know what exactly, but it definitely really scarred Bentino's reputation. There was no civil or criminal lawsuit or charges brought up against him, but it really did not look good for Bentino because of this.
For sure.
Now, many of his former followers have come forward and said that they would have to do these things called distortion readings, which is essentially therapy, unregulated therapy, where he would dissect their egos and tell them where everyone was, quote, out of alignment.
Oh, yeah. This is shit we've seen before in other cults.
Yes, especially in Nexium.
Oh, yeah.
One of Bentino's former girlfriends actually has this to say about these distortion readings. Anytime I would express my own opinion, I was told it was my ego's defense mechanism to try and survive, that the best thing I could do was surrender to the death of my ego. It was 10 months of complete obliteration of everything I knew myself to be. And this ego death is something that comes up a lot in cults too, and having an ego death is something that maybe sounds good to be able to let go of your ego, and having too much of an ego is a bad thing. You don't want too much of an ego. But you do need an ego. There's a reason why you have it there, so that you are able to say, no, I don't agree with you, or no, this is actually how I feel. No, this is me. I know myself, and I'm not going to just be pushed around.
Exactly.
And that's what he's trying to get everyone to do, to get to this point of ego death, so that he can just mold and manipulate them to believe whatever he wants them to believe, kind of break them down to build them back up.
Right.
And as we mentioned before, Bentino was really into, or is really into, detaching kind of with other friends or family members, especially those that are not within this belief system that the Bentino has.
Right.
In a 2017 lecture, he said, fuck your relationships, all of them. To your parents, to your family, to your friends, to the people around you, to me, fuck your relationships. They mean nothing. They mean nothing. Don't give a fuck about your family. Don't give a fuck about your children. Don't give a fuck about your parents. Don't give a fuck about your partner.
F you, what's your calling? F you, what's your calling?
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Yikes. So he kind of ran the gamut on that one, got all of them in there about don't giving a fuck about them. Bentino also was into, for at least for a while, really into controlling the weight of women in his group.
Ah, there we go.
There it is. And controlling how much sleep people get.
Yep.
So really into this idea where you only sleep for like a few hours at a time. So you're not getting a good REM cycle in. And so you become more subservient and more kind of docile, honestly.
Right.
And then also saying that there was toxins living in the fat cells of women, especially his girlfriends. There was one girlfriend he said that to, and said he wouldn't have sex with her unless if she lost a certain amount of weight because of these toxins living in the fat cells.
Wow.
Yeah. He said that wasn't true and that he didn't deny sex from her during that time, but I think he probably did.
I mean, that's pretty wild. Now, I know, and we didn't use it as a source, but one of the few things I've seen, because obviously you've done a lot more research than I have, but I know we had both watched, it was a short Vice documentary from 2018.
You can see it on YouTube. It's interesting.
And I know in that documentary he had a girlfriend at the time. I have no idea if he still has the same girlfriend, but yeah, at the time there was someone he was apparently seeing.
Yeah, he had multiple girlfriends and was kind of into polyamory.
I'm sure.
Yeah, was his feeling, kind of saying that he had so much love to give and all that kind of bullshit.
I'm sure he does.
Oh yeah. And to a select number of his female followers, he actually would use sex with him as a therapeutic method, as a way to cure them of their trauma.
This is straight up Keith Raniere, straight up Buddha Field cult.
It's just it's so blatantly fucked up. If anyone tells you that they can fix you by having sex with you or whatever, they're lying to you, they're tricking you.
Right.
Get out of there. He also says that one of his teachings is if something bothers you, it means you are not free, you are not enlightened.
Yeah.
So that he is able to abuse you, and then if you speak up against the abuse and say that you don't like it, that means there's something wrong with you and that you are doing something wrong. And then he says that he's doing it all out of love, and that's the reason why he's doing it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's so disgusting. And one of his ex-girlfriends has this to say, which I think is very interesting. He claims to be a mirror. Everything that you feel about him, you're trained to think is actually something about you. So whatever ugliness you see in him is ugliness about you. So even after, I kept thinking, oh my God, if I'm feeling these horrible things about him, what must that mean about me? And am I an evil entity? My brain was so fucked for a while.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's really disgusting and it's really gross. And it's just this toxic positivity going on along with it too, that's saying that you need to be feeling good about everything all the time. I mean, it's just disgusting. I really hate it. And at one point too, I think this was during the Vice documentary that Dylan mentioned, but the reporter says that, some people call you a cult. And he says, I don't know what a cult is, but I guess we are a cult. We are curious, unconditionally loving tribe. And that's so fucking classic, and it's so infuriating.
So
it's
douchey.
You know what a cult is.
Yeah, what a fucking douche.
You know what a cult is, and you are once again taking the word cult and trying to morph it into meaning something else so that your followers can say, oh, I am in a cult, and it's fine, that this is actually a good cult.
Right, yeah. What a douchey thing to say.
Yeah, it's disgusting. I really hate it. Before we finish with this, I just wanted to say something. There is a great person named Stephen Hassan, and he was a member of the Moonies cult back in the day.
Yes.
And has become a cult expert and really highly regarded in the field. And he created this thing called the BITE model, B-I-T-E,
right.
BITE model. And it's a kind of a good way to be able to decide if something is or isn't a cult. And it is behavioral control, information control, thought control, and emotional control.
Right.
And so you don't have to have all four of these to be a cult, but if you do have some of these, it means that is more likely that you are involved with a cult. And I would say that this group has all four of these, and that they put the group into undue influence because of them.
Absolutely.
And one thing that Stephen Hassan says is, if I knew then what I knew now, would I still have joined? And if the answer is no, then that means you're probably in a cult and you need to get out of there.
Absolutely. A great way to sort of gauge for yourself if you're involved in something that you think might be a cult.
Yeah, and if you are, that's okay. It is so common. Cults are more prevalent today because of the internet than they ever have been. So don't feel like you're stupid. Don't feel like there's something wrong with you. It's okay. You can get out and you can still live an incredible life.
Absolutely. Maureen, thank you for all of that research.
Oh my gosh, thank you. We're going to go into more depth with him, with Bentinho Massaro, at a later date, but we just wanted to get this episode out there. We want to hear from you all. If you've heard about this cult, what you think about it, please reach out to us at creepstreetpodcast@gmail.com.
Right. Well, I got some cult members to name for you.
Please do.
folks, the names of our top-tier Patreon subscribers. Of course, the Dream James Watkins, the Finnish Face via Lungfist, the Madman Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid Chris Hackworth, the oh-so-suave Sean Richardson, the British Bonebreaker Bex Martin, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand Noeline Vavilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey, the Killer Stud Carl Staub, the Firestarter Heather Carter, the Conqueror Christopher Damian Damaris, the Awfully Awesome Annie, the Murderous Maggie Leach, the Serf Sexy Sam Hackworth, the Evil Elizabeth Riley, Lauren Hellfire Hernandez Lopez, and the Maniacal Laura Maynard.
Thank you so much to all of our Patreon donors. We are so happy to have you with us, and we absolutely love creating that bonus content for you. And if you would like to be those people we just listed off, please feel free to check out patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast.
Absolutely. Like, rate, subscribe, tell your friends, family, and loved ones. Evangelize the name of Creep Street.
Amen.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
A good night and goodbye.
Goodbye.